Hello everyone, I am the Lore Explorer, and this episode will contain spoilers for Claire de Lune, a narrative-driven exploration game in which an interstellar smuggler and his daughter get stranded on a restricted planet. In the last few episodes, we covered about 6.5 miles of hostile terrain trying to find our daughter, all while being attacked by face-eating crabs and giant toenail monsters. We used our nanogun to traverse through pools of acid, pitfalls, and murderous plants, just to find ourselves staring down the barrel of a giant AI laser gun that's guarding some sort of giant facility. But we don't really have the option to turn around, so we have to come up with a way to outsmart this thing. I think the first thing anyone would do in this situation is ask their brilliant AI companion how to proceed. But as we've come to learn, Arturo only seems to be helpful when they want to be, so this one's up to us. This thing actually shoots a lot quicker than we expected it to, so after dodging a couple shots from it, we've had enough. Using our wits when all else fails, we can use our cube and tractor beam to jam the turret and prevent it from moving. Now that we are out of danger, Arturo finally wants to chime in, but luckily it's actually something useful. He tells us that using our suit allows us an energy view, which we are able to use to see energy sources and how the electricity is flowing through the area. Following the turret's energy back to its source, we can head to the small building next to the helipad to try to shut off the turret. After getting in and powering up the building, we can shut it off for good. Now safely able to explore, we quickly find that all the doors to the building are locked. Heading back to the control room, we can read the bulletins that are sent out through the entire facility to get a clue as to why. At about 9:12 a.m., an emergency bulletin was sent out instructing everyone to lock down the facility and to evacuate as quickly as possible. There are no indications in the bulletin as to why these evacuations are taking place, but one thing's for sure, whatever the reason is, it's seriously bad. The messages say that the workers at the facility need to get on a ship to leave immediately after they ensure the lockdown procedures are activated. And if they don't make it to an escape ship by 11 a.m., they are instructed to take enough food to survive for an excess of multiple days, and head for a designated research area to just survive until help comes at an undetermined time. An interesting thing to note here is the bulletin tell us that the facility seemed kind of surprised that there were crashes on the planet, and the doctors were dispatched to both Claire and our wreck. Apparently, the doctors dispatched to our wreck just never made it because we didn't see them. But anyway, regardless of horrors going on inside the facility, we don't have a choice but to enter it. We know this is where Claire has been taken, and if we want any hope to find her, we have to explore the dangers of this place. To get around the lockdown, we have to steal the identity of Gavin Contera, a low-level technician here at the facility. Using his card allows us to interact with the facility to try to gain access to it. And as our minds are racing, trying to come to terms with our situation, it seems Arturo's mind is completely elsewhere. After hearing 5 words from this building's computer systems, Arturo falls head over heels for the AI that operates the facility. While we are trying to find our way to our recently paralyzed daughter, whose fate is literally hanging in the balance, Arturo wants us to hook him up with some random chick he just met. It's just good to know Arturo truly cares. But luckily, the AI does let us into the building. To our surprise, it's actually just a trash compactor that quickly starts closing in on us. But using the magic of our nanogun, we are able to avoid being crushed into a cube ourselves by jamming the compactor. From here, we gain access to the vents and crawl our way into the building. When we exit the vents, it seems clear that everyone has indeed evacuated. All of the doors are locked, even on the inside due to the lockdown. And directly ahead of us is a giant fancy force field like we saw around our escape pod. We can't get through any of the doors or interact with the fancy robot we see here, so we're basically stuck. But after looking around for a bit, we find a Ketion transmitter laying around, which is actually capable of shutting down energy sources. Using this to break into the elevator gives us access to the office for the warehouse floor. Once inside, Arturo immediately asks us to put his code onto an isolinear chip and plug it into the AI's interface so he can flirt with her. While searching the room for the isolinear chip, we find that we're essentially trapped in here too. The one exit to the room isn't opening and the transporters are shut down facility-wide. Looking around, we find a few data pads that fill us in a bit into why such drastic steps have been taken here at this facility. We don't know exactly what it is, but something they call the containment was compromised, and whatever they were trying to contain got out. The emergency bulletin told the workers to leave and head to a designated research waypoint, but this worker encourages her friend to get as far away as she can from the facility. But we don't really have the time to focus on that, or the larger implications it might have, because right now, we have to focus on getting Arturo digitally laid so we can move on from here and try to get out of this room. And to do so, we have to help him load his code and an additional 4,000 of Arturo's classic fun facts onto an ISO linear chip that we found in a locker. After reminding Arturo that our goal is to actually find Claire and not really get you laid, we give him and the AI some digital privacy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Got anything?
That Daisy is a black box, and I love her.
Daisy?
The facility AI. She's as tight-lipped as a Grundar in dungarees.
Arturo informs us that the facility's AI's name is Daisy, and she didn't want to give up much information. Despite the apparently tight-lipped conversation, Arturo has fallen madly in love with her. He's so elated that he's literally just making up words to describe her. But luckily for us, Arturo was able to get one useful bit of information from her: a map of the entire facility's layout. The problem is, it's all under the same lockdown, and we will face the same resistance everywhere we go. To avoid this, Arturo comes up with the plan to break through the window in the storage room and traverse part of the cave system that this facility was built inside of. But to do that, we're going to have to leave this room, obviously. And to do that, we're going to have to use the IT crowd's field guide and just try shutting it off and on again. After tricking the computer into thinking the doors turn on with the transporter and finding the manual to the breaker, we managed to reset the power and shut off the security protocols for the office. This didn't do all that much aside from allowing the doors to open and activating the robot down below. Arturo and the screen labeled this thing as an assistance robot, which seems like it'd be helpful. But the laser gun attached to it, capable of killing a man, sort of pushes me towards security drone territory, if you ask me. Either way, we have to use the IT crowd field guide on this robot again. Picking up the Kedian transmitter, we can rush it to the power source for the robot, shutting it down. Reactivating it and reconfiguring it to get through the force field and shut it off is actually pretty simple, so maybe it is really an assistance drone after all. But once through the force field, we can try to take the nano core to try to get another function for our nanogun, but the container for it is locked. Now in a new room, we sort of have to take everything in. We notice that there are cameras all over the wall that sort of stick out. The workers here must have been recorded at all times, and all the internal notes regarding security seem to be pretty thorough. The owners of this facility seem to take security pretty seriously. As of now, we'd faced a giant AI laser turret set to shoot anything on sight, a killer assistance drone, and it seems we may be being recorded and possibly watched from some unknown location. All of this, combined with the fact that they have multiple sets of doctors on hand to send out to random crashes on the planet, is pretty concerning to me. What the hell happens here on a daily basis, and what went wrong? In the corner of the room, we find a data pad with something very interesting on it. The initial message seems innocent, but Arturo lets us know that there's an encrypted message attached to this one that wasn't intentionally put there by the sender. After cracking the code, we read something that sounds pretty menacing in the light of what's happening here. The message reads, "Everything is ready for tomorrow. The passcode to the force field is fire. Start your sequence at 8:30 a.m. Don't be late." Did someone plan this containment leak? The message doesn't even seem to be meant for the recipient, Casey, since the message was sent on the 17th, and Casey was actually on a field assignment at this time. The encrypted message reads that everything is set for tomorrow, and it's dated the 22nd. So what sequence was set to start at 8:30 a.m., just 42 minutes before the entire facility was ordered to evacuate? But again, this isn't too important at the moment. Regardless of what happened, we know this is where Claire has been taken, so we don't have a choice but to go rescue her. In fact, Each hint that something terrible has happened here makes me just want to find her faster because she could be in danger. Every second could count. Heading back to get the nanocore with the passcode fire allows us to unlock another function of our nanogun that Arturo came up with. This time, instead of retracting the nanomatter cube, we get a beam that repels the nanomatter cube. We have to do some work to get it done, but we are able to use the crane here to smash the window, giving us access to the cave system that we need to get to. And, of course, as the pattern goes, as soon as we're trying to do something dangerous, like using a magical floating matter to avoid falling to our deaths while traversing a cave system of unknown danger, Arturo chimes in with a fun fact to remind us how dangerous what we are doing is and how easily we can die doing it. John reminds Arturo that's not what a fun fact is. And remember, we trust Arturo with our life. But honestly, they did give us the tools to safely traverse these caves in the first place, without which we wouldn't have made it an inch. So I suppose actions speak louder than quote-unquote fun facts. But after getting through the caves and fighting an industrial fan, we can see that Arturo is able to use his words artfully if he chooses to do so.
So, Daisy, huh?
Daisy is both light and darkness, strength and temperance, passion and serenity. I am her sun, and she is my moon. She the flower, and I the supple earth where her roots find purchase.
After getting through the industrial fan and climbing some stairs, we find the entrance to the lab on the other side of some cliffs. Arturo ensures us that if we plug him into the computer's AI, he can activate the bridge to the other side. But after plugging him into Daisy, she extends a different bridge that leads us to the control center of this area. While trying to find a way to move the crane to allow us to jump across since the bridge won't work, we can explore a bit more of the facility. Locked behind a door, we find a section of the building in which the workers here are studying experimental materials. An unstable, extremely high power source, some highly flammable and explosive materials. You know, maybe it's not so surprising that the building was evacuated after all. Maybe it was just an accident with these materials in another lab or something. But whatever the case is, our little buddy Arturo is lucky. We have to access a bunch of computers here to navigate, which is giving him tons of chances to talk to his enigmatic digital romance, Daisy. It seems like she actually kind of wants us here, because each time Arturo interacts with her, a new quote-unquote vulnerability shows up for us to exploit. But the thing is, these exploits don't actually seem to get us where we want to go. So instead of asking Daisy, we have to resort to using the experimental power goop and redirecting the power it makes to the crane. With the new goop powering the crane, it jumps back online, allowing us to maneuver it, which gives us a chance to ride it over to the other side. But once we get to the other side, we realize that we needed a key card to enter the lab. It's probably the key card that we found after crossing the bridge that Daisy extended. One that we wouldn't have had if Daisy didn't lead us on that sidetrack. So an argument can be made that Daisy isn't leading us to where we want to go, but only so she can point us to the things that we need to get there. But if she is helping us purposefully, it's indirectly and with no actual guidance. The second the doors to the lab open, we are met with a grisly scene. We can spot two bodies on the floor, covered and lying in pools of some strange blackish purple substance. Arturo tells us that this is a kind of inactive nanomatter, and if it were active, it would have killed us by now. So I guess that solves the mystery as to why they evacuated everybody. Some form of deadly nanomatter escaped some containment system and has started killing people. But strangely, not everyone here has died from this nanomatter. At the end of the hall, we find another dead body lying in front of a door with a clear explosion hole in the middle of it. John comes to the conclusion that someone must have set a bomb off here, and my guess is it probably triggered when this poor guy tried to activate the elevator. It's starting to become more clear that whatever happened at this facility was not an accident, and instead an act of sabotage. If someone is setting off explosives, it seems likely that whoever did this also blew up the containment this nanomatter was kept in. According to Arturo, this stuff kills quickly, and to do so, it would have to move and make decisions on its own. With Claire somewhere inside this facility, it's hard not to be freaking out right now. It's bad enough that she's paralyzed from the waist down on a restricted planet and taken to a facility in which they do experimental research, but now, what are the chances that her doctors even stayed by her side when there's this killer nanomatter substance going around the facility murdering people? We really need to hurry up and find Claire. But I think that's probably enough for one video. In this episode, we were finally able to reach the facility Claire is being held at. We arrived to find an empty facility under lockdown and evacuation protocols. We struggle to make it through to the lab while being led around the whole facility by Arturo's new AI love interest, until eventually we stumble upon a sabotaged elevator and a couple of dead bodies covered in nanomatter. This seems to make it clear that whoever wrote that encrypted message planned for all of this to happen. Now, we just have to find out how bad it actually is and find Claire. The story is heating up and there is plenty of more lore to explore, so if you liked the video, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I try to cover the games I love and present them in an interesting and cohesive way so people don't miss out on the games they enjoy. A special thank you to the members here on the channel. Since you guys have joined, I have been very motivated to work harder and post more content. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. It's super amazing to me that some of you have been a member here for a full year. The support you guys have given me really does push the channel to greater heights, and I can't thank you enough. As always, this is the Lore Explorer, diving deep into the lore so you don't have to.